Defensively, Newcastle were second best, lost the game for me in midfield, culminating with a few defensive issues as well, and yeah, it was just a bad day in the office. Newcastle come to Villa Park today, and you know, it's been a ground with horrible memories for Newcastle fans, with those two relegations in 2009 and 2016, but a lot more victories of late. And obviously last season was a great win for Eddie Howe's side. It didn't lead Newcastle on to get into Europe, but it was a great win nonetheless, and they'll be looking for something similar today. Newcastle in a much better position. They're now in the box seat for Champions League football next term, and this will be a tough one. It's probably one of the tougher ones that they've had of late, but I think realistically now for Newcastle, with Jason Taylor in charge, they're certainly inspired a little bit, despite the issues that Eddie Howe suffered. They seem to be doing it for the manager, which is a nice thing, and I've heard a couple of the players say that as well, that it's kind of galvanised them a little bit. I'm sure Eddie Howe will be desperate to get back as soon as possible, but he knows that every single player is given their all. I said it yesterday as well, every player on that team sheet is in the best form of the season, which bodes well for this game as well. So I think if Newcastle can make a nice positive start here tonight, Villa a little bit deflated after going out of the Champions League, but Newcastle will be looking to put 3 points on the board again today. If they do, it'll be a huge step towards that Champions League place and possibly top 3, and then after that maybe they can look at that runners up spot as well, but we'll not get too carried away. 3 points here today would be fantastic. Well, a nightmare at Villa Park for Newcastle United here tonight, and yeah, it was one of those performances where there were bad vibes from the very early part of this game, going 1-0 down after 33 seconds. Defensively, Newcastle were second best, lost the game for me in midfield, culminating with a few defensive issues as well, and yeah, it was just a bad day in the office. And Newcastle have been on an unbelievable run. Look, nobody can take it away from them. 6 wins in a row. They've won the Carabao Cup, but they come here today knowing that this was an important game. I think the takeaway from it is that it's just never that easy that you can just turn up and roll opposition over, especially a side as good as Aston Villa. Unai Emery had them fired up. He was always going to, after what happened on Boxing Day, and sadly this defeat for Newcastle will give them something to think about, and something negative to think about in a way. But look, no panic, 5 games left. Newcastle still in 3rd place at the moment, still got everything to play for, and they go into that game against Ipswich knowing that they just had to stay calm and bring that A game back to the table. It hasn't been easy with Eddie Howe being ill at the moment, and Newcastle still don't know when he's going to return, but the players know what to do now in those last 5 games. And really for me today was a wake-up call, yes, but not a panic moment, because at the end of the day Newcastle have been brilliant in the last few months, and as I say, it's been a season to remember, and nothing should detract away from that. But yeah, tough defeat today, probably the worst performance away from home for a long time, no doubt about that. But some worrying performances in there: Bruno, Joe Linton, Kieran Trippier. Maybe it was just a game too far. Newcastle have had 3 games in the space of 6 or 7 days. This was going to be tough. But Newcastle must now just brush themselves down, get ready for that game against Ipswich, and pick up where they left off in recent weeks. They've got a full week to prepare for it, and they'll probably need it after some of the mistakes today. Well, back on Tyneside, and on reflection, Newcastle's result doesn't get any less disappointing to lose like that in that manner to Aston Villa. But the promising news is that there's 5 games left. Newcastle have got a long way to go, and having thought about it, there was always going to be the odd bump in the road. That's exactly what that situation was today at Villa Park. So Newcastle beaten, they must move on quickly. Preparation. There wasn't much talking after the game from players in the mix zone. I don't think any of them stopped. I don't think there's any players wanting to do anything but let the football do the talking, which is what they're going to have to do against Ipswich next week. But no major problems for me. That was just 1 game too many. Newcastle now have to just, as I said before, dust themselves down and move on. And Newcastle really going to Aston Villa was always going to be tough, but I think it was just the manner of that second half performance. And yeah, I think there was a bit of fatigue in there, but the standards dropped a little bit, and I know that the players are very keen to keep those standards high, especially playing for the manager. He sets those standards, and I think we've seen it a couple of times in previous years where Newcastle have had a little dip, but they've ended up today losing heavily, and they just have to make sure that dip doesn't turn into a little sort of end of season stutter. But for me, it just feels like it was just that game in isolation. 1 game too many, as I say, on the back of a long winning run, and Newcastle just couldn't sustain it. And a team like Aston Villa were always going to be looking to punish Newcastle. They were the wounded animal, having gone out of the Champions League to PSG, and Newcastle just happened to be the team standing up in front of them next. And yeah, I think Villa really did take it out on Newcastle earlier tonight. So yeah, Newcastle beaten, but they move on quickly. Ipswich Town next at St James Park, and another game for the fans to get right behind the team and help drive Newcastle to the Champions League.